The morning sun was bright over New York City as passengers lined up to board Flight 447 to Los Angeles. Among them stood a tall man in his early 40s. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit and carried a leather briefcase. His shoes were polished to a shine. Everything about him spoke of success and wealth. He walked through the gate with his first-class boarding pass in hand. The gate agent smiled at him and wished him a pleasant flight. He nodded politely and made his way down the jet bridge. His seat was 2A, right at the front of the plane in the first-class cabin. As he entered the aircraft, a flight attendant stood near the entrance. She was a woman in her late 30s with blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her name tag read, Jennifer. She glanced at him as he walked past. Her smile seemed to freeze on her face for just a moment. He found his seat easily and placed his briefcase in the overhead compartment. The first-class seats were large and comfortable, covered in soft leather. He settled into his window seat and pulled out his phone to check his emails. He had 3 meetings scheduled for tomorrow in Los Angeles. His company was about to close a major deal worth millions of dollars. A few minutes passed. Jennifer appeared beside his seat. "Excuse me, sir," she said. Her voice was sharp. "Can I see your boarding pass?" He looked up from his phone, slightly surprised. "Of course," he said. He reached into his jacket pocket and handed her the boarding pass. She looked at it for a long moment, studying it carefully. "Thank you," she said finally, handing it back. But she didn't walk away. She stood there watching him. He returned to his phone, trying to ignore the awkward moment. Other passengers were boarding now, filling up the first-class cabin. A businessman in his 60s took the seat across the aisle. An older couple settled into the row behind him. 10 minutes later, Jennifer was back. "Sir, I need to see your boarding pass again," she said. This time her voice was louder. Other passengers turned to look. He felt a familiar knot form in his stomach. He had experienced moments like this before in his life. "Is there a problem?" he asked calmly. He pulled out the boarding pass again and showed it to her. "I just need to verify," Jennifer said. She took the pass from his hand this time and walked toward the front of the plane. He could see her talking to another flight attendant, a younger woman with dark hair. They both looked back at him. The businessman across the aisle leaned over. "What's going on?" he whispered. "I'm not sure," he replied quietly. But he knew. Deep down, he knew exactly what was happening. Jennifer returned with the other flight attendant. "Sir, are you sure you're in the right seat?" Jennifer asked. "Yes, I'm sure," he said. His voice remained calm, but his jaw tightened. "That's my boarding pass. That's my seat. It's just that we need to make sure all passengers are seated correctly," Jennifer continued. Several passengers were openly staring now. The cabin felt suddenly hot and small. "I understand," he said slowly. "But I've shown you my boarding pass twice now. I've shown you my identification. Everything matches. Is there something else you need?" Jennifer's face flushed slightly. "Sir, there's no need to get upset." "I'm not upset," he said. "I'm confused about why I'm being questioned repeatedly when I've provided all the necessary documentation." A man in a business suit 2 rows back spoke up. "He's been sitting there since he boarded. What's the issue?" Jennifer ignored the comment. She looked at the boarding pass one more time, then at him, then back at the pass. "I'm going to need you to wait here while I check with the gate agent," she said. "The flight is about to leave," he pointed out. "Can we resolve this quickly?" "Sir, I need you to stay calm," Jennifer said, her voice rising. "I am calm," he replied. His hands rested on the armrests. He hadn't moved. He hadn't raised his voice. But somehow, in Jennifer's eyes, he was the problem. The businessman across the aisle spoke again. "Ma'am, he's been nothing but polite. What exactly is the issue here?" Jennifer spun toward him. "Sir, this doesn't concern you. I'm following proper safety protocols." "Safety protocols?" The businessman sounded confused. "The man is sitting in his assigned seat." By now, almost everyone in first class was watching. Some passengers in economy were craning their necks to see what was happening. A young woman 3 rows back had her phone out. She held it up, pointing the camera toward the front of the plane. Jennifer walked to the front galley and picked up a phone. He could see her speaking urgently into it. The other flight attendant, the younger one, approached him. "I'm so sorry about this," she whispered. "I don't know what's going on." "It's not your fault," he told her. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The plane was supposed to have pushed back from the gate already. Passengers were getting restless. Some were checking their watches. Others were muttering complaints. Finally, Jennifer returned. This time she had a supervisor with her, a man in a different uniform. "Sir," the supervisor said, "we've verified your ticket. Everything is in order. I apologize for the confusion." Jennifer's face turned red. She opened her mouth to say something, then closed it again. "Thank you," he said to the supervisor. He wanted this to be over, but Jennifer wasn't finished. "He was being aggressive," she said suddenly. "He raised his voice at me." Several passengers gasped. The businessman across the aisle stood up. "That's not true. I was sitting right here." He never raised his voice. He was completely respectful the entire time. The older woman behind him spoke up too. "She's lying. That young man didn't do anything wrong. She's been harassing him since he sat down." The supervisor looked uncomfortable. "Let's all just calm down," he said. "I want him removed from this flight," Jennifer insisted. "I don't feel safe with him on board." The cabin erupted. Passengers were talking over each other. Some were defending him. Others were demanding to know what was happening. The young woman with the phone was still recording. He sat perfectly still through all of it. His hands remained on the armrests. His expression was neutral. Inside, his heart was pounding. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened to him. It probably wouldn't be the last, but it never got easier. The supervisor made a decision. "I'm calling security," he said. "We need to sort this out on the ground." As they waited for security to arrive, the cabin was tense and silent. The passengers who had defended him looked angry. Jennifer stood at the front of the plane with her arms crossed. The young woman was still recording everything on her phone. He knew that when security arrived, they would see him, a black man in first class, and they would make assumptions. They always did. No matter how expensive his suit was, no matter how successful he had become, in moments like this, none of that mattered. The young woman with the phone never stopped recording. Her name was Ashley, and she had 2 million followers on social media. She made videos about travel, fashion, and social issues. She knew immediately that what she was witnessing was important. From her seat 3 rows back, she had captured everything. She filmed Jennifer approaching the man multiple times. She recorded the conversation, every word. She caught the moment when other passengers stood up to defend him. She recorded Jennifer's accusation that he had been aggressive, and she recorded the other passengers calling her a liar. When security finally arrived and escorted the man off the plane for questioning, Ashley kept filming. She watched as he walked down the aisle with dignity, his head held high. He didn't look angry. He looked tired. The flight was delayed for another 40 minutes. Jennifer insisted on filing a full report. The supervisor questioned several passengers about what they had witnessed. Finally, the man was allowed to reboard. Jennifer was moved to work in the economy cabin. The supervisor personally apologized to him in front of the other first-class passengers. As the plane finally took off, Ashley reviewed her footage. She had captured everything. The video was clear. The audio was perfect. There was no question about what had happened. This man had been harassed for no reason except the color of his skin. She opened her social media app and began typing. "Just witnessed the most disgusting display of discrimination on my flight. A well-dressed black man was repeatedly harassed by a flight attendant who demanded to see his boarding pass 3 times, then called security on him for being aggressive when he was nothing but polite. Other passengers had to defend him. This is unacceptable." She uploaded the video. It was 11 minutes long. She tagged the airline in her post. Then she put her phone in airplane mode and closed her eyes. She had no idea what was about to happen. 6 hours later, when the plane landed in Los Angeles, Ashley turned off airplane mode. Her phone immediately exploded with notifications. The video had been viewed 3 million times. It had been shared 50,000 times. Her mentions were flooded with comments. She scrolled through them as she waited to deplane. People were furious. They were calling for the flight attendant to be fired. They were demanding the airline issue a statement. They were sharing their own stories of discrimination in airports and on planes. Someone had identified the man in the video. Comments were flooding in with his name and background. He was a billionaire. He had started a tech company in his garage 15 years ago and built it into a global empire. He was worth over $2 billion. He had been featured in major business magazines. He donated millions to charity every year. This man is worth $2 billion and they treated him like a criminal, one comment read. If this can happen to a billionaire, imagine what happens to regular black people every day, another said. Ashley felt her phone buzzing constantly as she walked through the airport. News outlets were messaging her asking permission to use her video. Other influencers were sharing it. Celebrities were commenting on it. By the time she reached her hotel room, the video had 10 million views. The hashtag Justice for Passengers was trending. The airline's official social media accounts were being flooded with angry comments. People were posting screenshots of themselves canceling their airline rewards credit cards. Travelers were sharing photos of themselves tearing up their frequent flyer membership cards. The airline's stock price had dropped 2% in after-hours trading. Financial news websites were running stories about the potential damage to the company's reputation. Business analysts were discussing the cost of discrimination scandals on major corporations. Ashley did a video update from her hotel room. "I never expected this to blow up like this," she said to her camera. "But I'm glad it did. What I witnessed today was wrong. That man deserves justice. Every person who has experienced discrimination while traveling deserves justice." That video got 5 million views in 3 hours. Meanwhile, the billionaire arrived at his hotel in Los Angeles. His assistant had already informed him that the video was going viral. He sat on the edge of his hotel bed and watched it on his laptop. Seeing himself on screen, seeing the way Jennifer had looked at him, hearing her accuse him of being aggressive when he had been nothing but calm, it all came flooding back. He felt angry. But more than that, he felt exhausted. He was tired of having to prove himself, tired of being questioned, tired of being seen as a threat simply because of his skin color. His phone rang. It was his lawyer. "Have you seen what's happening online?" His lawyer asked. "I'm watching the video now," he replied. "This is big, really big. The airline is going to have to respond. I think we should prepare a statement." "Not yet," he said. "Let's wait and see what they do first." That night he couldn't sleep. He kept checking social media on his phone. The story was everywhere. News websites were running articles about it. Television news channels were discussing it. Commentators were debating it on talk shows. The airline finally issued a statement at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. "We are aware of an incident that occurred on Flight 447 today. We take all passenger concerns seriously and are conducting a thorough investigation. We do not tolerate discrimination of any kind." The response to their statement was immediate and brutal. People called it weak. They said it was a standard corporate non-apology. They demanded specifics. They wanted to know if the flight attendant would be fired. They wanted to know what policies the airline had in place to prevent discrimination. The hashtag evolved. Now it was boycott the airline. Thousands of people were posting about canceling their flights. Travel bloggers were writing articles recommending alternative airlines. Corporate clients were threatening to move their business travel contracts to competitors. By midnight, the video had 20 million views. It had been translated into 6 languages. International news outlets were picking up the story. People in other countries were sharing their own experiences of discrimination while traveling. The billionaire's phone rang again. It was a reporter from a major newspaper. "I'd like to get your comment on what happened," the reporter said. "I'm not ready to make a statement yet," he replied. "Can you at least confirm that you're the person in the video?" He hesitated. His identity was already public. People had figured out who he was. There was no point in hiding. "Yes, that's me." "How did it make you feel to be treated that way?" He closed his eyes. How did it make him feel? Humiliated, angry, sad, frustrated, exhausted. "Like no matter how successful I become, some people will never see past my skin color," he said quietly. The reporter was silent for a moment. "Thank you for that," she said. "I'll be writing a piece about this tomorrow. Would you be willing to do a full interview?" "Let me think about it," he said. The next morning, the story was on the front page of newspapers across the country. Morning talk shows discussed it. Radio hosts debated it. It was the top trending topic on every social media platform. Ashley's video had reached 50 million views. She had gained 500,000 new followers overnight. Brands were reaching out to her asking if she wanted to do sponsored content. A book agent contacted her asking if she wanted to write about social justice issues. The airline's stock price dropped another 3% when the market opened. Their CEO was being pressured to make a statement. Corporate sponsors were calling emergency meetings to discuss whether they should continue their partnerships with the airline. The billionaire woke up to hundreds of messages of support. Other black business leaders were reaching out. Civil rights organizations were asking if he wanted their help. Regular people were sending him messages thanking him for staying calm and dignified during the incident. But there were also messages from people who defended the flight attendant. They said the video didn't show the full story. They claimed he must have done something to provoke her. They said people were jumping to conclusions without knowing all the facts. The debate raged online. Some people insisted it was clearly discrimination. Others argued that flight attendants have difficult jobs and should be given the benefit of the doubt. The conversation about race, privilege, and justice in America was playing out in millions of comments, posts, and articles. The airline announced they would be holding a press conference that afternoon. Everyone waited to hear what they would say. Jennifer sat in her living room watching the news coverage with growing horror. Her face wasn't clearly visible in the video, but people had figured out who she was. Someone had found her social media profiles. Her personal information was being shared online. She had received hundreds of angry messages. Some contained threats. She had worked for the airline for 15 years. She had never been in trouble before. She considered herself a professional. And now she was being called a racist on national television. Her phone rang. It was her union representative, a man named Tom. "Jennifer, we need to talk about strategy," he said. "Strategy?" she repeated. Her voice shook. "The airline has put you on paid administrative leave. That's standard. But with the media attention this is getting, we need to control the narrative. I think you should tell your side of the story." "I tried to tell them what happened," she said. "Nobody wants to listen. Then we make them listen. I've been contacted by a morning talk show. They want to interview you. This is your chance to explain what really happened." Jennifer felt sick to her stomach. "I don't know if I can do that." "Jennifer, listen to me. Right now everyone thinks you're a villain. If you stay silent, that's the story that sticks. But if you go on television and tell the truth, people will see your side." She thought about it for a moment. Tom was right. She couldn't let this video define her entire career. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll do it." 2 days later, Jennifer appeared on a popular morning talk show. She wore a simple blue dress and minimal makeup. Her eyes were red from crying. The host, a woman named Patricia, greeted her with a sympathetic smile. "Thank you for being here, Jennifer," Patricia said. "I know this has been a difficult week for you." Jennifer nodded. Her hands were shaking. "It's been a nightmare," she said. Her voice cracked with emotion. "Let's talk about what happened on that flight. The video that went viral shows you repeatedly asking a passenger for his boarding pass. Can you tell us your side of the story?" Jennifer took a deep breath. "First, I want to say that this had nothing to do with race, nothing. I've been a flight attendant for 15 years. I've served thousands of passengers of all backgrounds. I pride myself on treating everyone with respect and professionalism." "So what happened?" Patricia asked. "When that passenger boarded, there was an issue with the seating chart. There appeared to be a duplicate boarding pass situation. This happens sometimes with computer errors. I asked to see his boarding pass to verify which seat he was supposed to be in. That's standard procedure. But you asked him 3 times, Patricia pointed out. Because he became defensive immediately. He started raising his voice at me. He questioned my authority. I felt threatened. Patricia leaned forward. Other passengers in the video say he never raised his voice. Jennifer's face flushed. They weren't standing where I was standing. They didn't hear his tone. He was hostile from the beginning. Why did you call security? Because he was creating a disturbance on the aircraft. As a flight attendant, passenger safety is my #1 priority. If I feel that a passenger is being aggressive or disruptive, I have a duty to report it. It's literally in my job description. Jennifer's voice grew stronger as she spoke. She had practiced this with Tom. She knew what to say. The video makes it look like you were harassing him, Patricia said. The video doesn't show everything. It doesn't show what happened before the recording started. It doesn't show him glaring at me. It doesn't show his body language. I felt genuinely threatened, but he's a billionaire. He flies first class regularly. Why would there be confusion about his seat? I didn't know who he was. I don't look up passenger information before they board. I just saw someone who became immediately aggressive when I asked a simple question. Tom had coached her on this point. Make it about her feelings. Make it about safety. Don't make it about race. Patricia showed a clip from the video where other passengers defended the billionaire. What do you say to these passengers who claim he was polite? Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. I think they wanted to be part of something. They wanted to be heroes. So they twisted what really happened. And now I'm being destroyed online. I've received death threats. People are posting my home address. My children are being harassed at school. All because I was trying to do my job. She wiped her eyes. The camera zoomed in on her face. Do you think race played any role in this incident? Patricia asked directly. Absolutely not, Jennifer said firmly. I've never discriminated against anyone. I have black friends. I've dated black men. I voted for Obama twice. I'm not a racist. Patricia asked a few more questions, then thanked Jennifer for her bravery in coming forward. As the interview ended, Jennifer felt a sense of relief. She had told her story. Now people would understand. But the response was mixed. Some people believed her. They flooded social media with messages of support. They said flight attendants have difficult jobs and should be trusted to make judgment calls about safety. They said the video was taken out of context. They accused the billionaire of playing the race card. A hashtag emerged. Is Stand with Jennifer. Thousands of people used it. Some were flight attendants themselves who talked about the challenges they face. Others were people who believed that society was too quick to call everything racist. Conservative commentators picked up the story. They discussed it on their shows and podcasts. They said it was an example of how innocent people's lives could be ruined by viral videos and mob mentality. They said Jennifer was the real victim. Her union released a statement supporting her. Flight attendants have the right and responsibility to ensure passenger safety. Jennifer followed proper protocols. She should not be punished for doing her job. We call on the airline to reinstate her immediately. But the majority of public opinion remained against her. People analyzed her interview and found inconsistencies. They pointed out that she had changed her story from the original incident report. They noted that other passengers contradicted her claims about the billionaire being aggressive. Legal experts weighed in on television. They explained that calling security on someone without cause could be considered discrimination if it was based on racial bias. They discussed similar cases that had resulted in lawsuits and settlements. The billionaire's lawyer released a statement. Our client conducted himself with dignity and respect throughout this incident. Multiple witnesses confirm this. We are disturbed by the flight attendant's continued mischaracterization of events. Her claims that she felt threatened by a man sitting calmly in his seat are not credible. Ashley, the woman who recorded the video, posted a response to Jennifer's interview. I was there. I recorded what happened. He never raised his voice. He never showed any aggression. Jennifer is lying, and it's disgusting that she's trying to play the victim. That video got 15 million views. Civil rights organizations held press conferences. They talked about the long history of black people being falsely accused of being aggressive or threatening. They explained how these stereotypes led to discrimination and sometimes violence. They said Jennifer's interview was a textbook example of how racism works in modern America. She doesn't have to wear a hood or use slurs to be racist, one activist explained. Racism today is about assumptions. It's about seeing a black man in first class and assuming he doesn't belong there. It's about perceiving politeness as aggression because of skin color. Jennifer may not think she's racist, but her actions were absolutely racist. Jennifer watched all of this unfold from her home. She stopped going outside. She had reporters camping on her lawn. Her neighbors avoided her. Her children were being bullied online. Her husband was supportive but stressed. Their marriage was strained. She received a call from the airline. The investigation was ongoing. She needed to remain on administrative leave. They suggested she avoid any more media appearances. Tom, her union representative, tried to stay positive. "We're going to fight this," he told her. "We have a strong case. You were doing your job. You have rights." But Jennifer could feel everything slipping away. Her reputation was destroyed. Even people who believed her story seemed to distance themselves from her. She had become toxic. Late at night, alone in her bedroom, she questioned herself for the first time. Had she treated the billionaire differently because he was black? She didn't think so. She didn't feel racist. But doubt crept in. Would she have asked a white man for his boarding pass 3 times? Would she have called security on a white passenger who was sitting calmly in his seat? She pushed the thoughts away. She had done nothing wrong. She was the victim here. Her life was being ruined by a viral video that didn't tell the whole story. But deep down, in a place she didn't want to examine too closely, she wondered if maybe everyone else was right. The airline's headquarters in Atlanta was in crisis mode. The CEO, a man named Richard Chen, sat in an emergency board meeting. Around the table were executives, lawyers, and public relations specialists. The mood was tense. "We've lost $12 million in market value in 3 days, the CFO reported. Corporate clients are threatening to move their contracts. 3 major sponsors have paused their partnerships pending the outcome of our investigation." Richard rubbed his temples. He had been CEO for 8 years and had never faced a crisis like this. "Where are we with the internal investigation?" Sarah Martinez, the head of human resources, opened her folder. "We've assembled a team. We're interviewing all crew members who were on that flight. We're reviewing security footage from the gate and the aircraft. We're examining all communications between staff." "How long until we have results?" Richard asked. "We're moving as quickly as possible, but we need to be thorough. If we rush this and get it wrong, the backlash will be even worse. I'd say we need at least 2 weeks." "2 weeks?" Richard stood up and paced the room. "Our stock is dropping every day. The media is destroying us. We need answers now." The head of legal, a woman named Diana Roberts, spoke up. "Richard, I understand the pressure. But if we fire Jennifer without a proper investigation and she sues us for wrongful termination, that could cost us millions. We need to follow our procedures exactly." Richard knew she was right, but it didn't make him feel any better. "Fine, 2 weeks. But I want daily updates. And Sarah, I want this investigation to be completely transparent. Document everything." Over the next several days, the investigation team worked around the clock. They started with the other flight attendants who had been on the flight. There were 4 total, including Jennifer. The first interview was with Michael, a flight attendant who had worked with Jennifer for 5 years. He sat nervously in the conference room facing 2 investigators. "Tell us what you observed during the boarding process," one investigator said. Michael shifted in his seat. Jennifer came to the galley while passengers were boarding. She pointed to the man in seat 2A and said something like, "Did you see that guy? I bet he's in the wrong seat." Did she say why she thought that? "No, but I looked and he was well-dressed, professional. I didn't see any reason to think he was in the wrong seat." "What happened next?" She went over and asked for his boarding pass. Then she came back and asked me to look at it. I checked it and told her everything looked fine, but she wasn't satisfied. She went back again. "Did the passenger seem aggressive or threatening to you?" Michael shook his head. "Not at all. He seemed confused about why she kept questioning him. But he was polite." The investigators made detailed notes. "Is there anything else you think we should know?" Michael hesitated. He looked uncomfortable. "Look, I don't want to get Jennifer in trouble. She's been here a long time. But honestly, this isn't the first time something like this has happened." "What do you mean?" "A couple of months ago, there was a young black woman in first class. Jennifer made a comment about how she probably got upgraded or was using miles. I thought it was odd at the time, but I didn't say anything." The investigators exchanged glances. "Did you report that incident?" "No, it seemed like just a comment. But looking back now, I wish I had." The next interview was with Rachel, a younger flight attendant who had only been with the airline for 2 years. She was visibly nervous. "I saw the whole thing," she said. "I tried to tell Jennifer to let it go, but she wouldn't listen." "Tell us exactly what happened." "When the passenger boarded, Jennifer watched him walk to his seat. Then she said to me, 'Something's not right about that guy.' I asked what she meant, and she said, 'He just doesn't look like he belongs in first class.'" The investigator leaned forward. "Those were her exact words?" "Yes, I remember, because it made me uncomfortable." "What did you do?" "I asked if there was a problem with his boarding pass. She said she was going to check. After she asked him for it the first time, she showed it to me and asked what I thought. I said it looked fine, but she insisted something was wrong. Did the passenger do or say anything that could be interpreted as aggressive? No, he was completely calm. Even when Jennifer called security, he just sat there quietly. Other passengers were more upset than he was. The investigation team reviewed security footage next. They had cameras at the gate, in the jet bridge, and limited angles inside the aircraft. The footage confirmed the timeline. It showed the billionaire boarding normally. It showed Jennifer watching him. It showed her approaching him multiple times. But the most damning evidence came from the aircraft communications. All crew members wore headsets that allowed them to communicate with each other and with the cockpit. Those communications were recorded. The investigators listened to the audio files. They heard Jennifer's voice. "We have a situation in first class. Passenger in 2A. I don't think his ticket is valid." The supervisor's voice responded. "Did you check his boarding pass?" "Yes, but something seems off. I think we need to verify with the gate." "What's the passenger's name?" Jennifer read the name from the boarding pass. The supervisor was silent for a moment, then said, "That's a confirmed first-class ticket. Paid in full." "What's the issue?" "He's being uncooperative, questioning my authority." Another voice came on the line. It was Rachel. "This is Rachel. The passenger has been completely polite. He's shown his boarding pass multiple times. There's no issue here." "Rachel, stay off this channel," Jennifer snapped. The supervisor's voice again. "Jennifer, if his ticket is valid and he's not causing a disturbance, we need to move on. We're about to close the door. I want security to verify his identity. I don't feel safe." There was a long pause. Then the supervisor said, "Calling security." The investigators played this recording multiple times. They made transcripts. The evidence was becoming very clear. They interviewed the gate agents next. The agent who had scanned the billionaire's boarding pass remembered him clearly. He was polite. Said good morning. His boarding pass scanned without any issues. First class, seat 2A. I wished him a good flight. Was there anything unusual about his ticket or behavior? Nothing at all. It was a completely normal boarding. The investigators also reached out to other passengers who had been in first class. The businessman who had spoken up during the incident was eager to talk. "I've never seen anything like it," he said over the phone. "That man did absolutely nothing wrong." The flight attendant was harassing him. There's no other word for it. And then when other passengers called her out, she lied and said he was being aggressive. I was sitting right across from him. He never even raised his voice. The older couple behind him said the same thing. So did several other passengers. Every witness contradicted Jennifer's claims, but the investigation team knew they needed to interview Jennifer herself. She came to headquarters with Tom, her union representative. She sat across from the investigators with her arms crossed. "Walk us through what happened from your perspective," the lead investigator said. Jennifer repeated the same story she had told on television. The passenger was aggressive. He questioned her authority. She felt threatened. "Jennifer, we have recordings from your headset. We've listened to all the communications. At no point did you mention feeling threatened until after other passengers started defending him." Jennifer's face reddened. "I told the supervisor there was an issue. You said his ticket might not be valid, but you had already checked it multiple times. Why did you continue to question him?" "I was following protocol." "What protocol requires you to check a valid boarding pass 3 times? Jennifer didn't have an answer for that. The investigator continued. "Multiple crew members have said you made comments about the passenger before you even spoke to him. You said he didn't look like he belonged in first class. Can you explain that?" "I don't remember saying that. 3 people remember you saying it," Tom jumped in. "My client has a right not to answer questions that could be used against her. This is an internal investigation, not a criminal proceeding," the investigator replied. "But Jennifer, you should know that we have substantial evidence that contradicts your account of what happened." After Jennifer left, the investigation team compiled their findings. The report was detailed and comprehensive. It included transcripts, witness statements, and timeline analysis. The conclusion was clear. Jennifer had profiled the passenger based on race. She had no legitimate reason to question him repeatedly. Her claims that he was aggressive were contradicted by every witness and all available evidence. Her statement that she felt threatened was made only after passengers challenged her behavior. Sarah Martinez presented the findings to Richard and the executive team. The evidence is overwhelming, she said. Jennifer racially profiled this passenger. She harassed him without cause. Then she lied about his behavior to justify calling security. Richard read through the report carefully. As CEO, he knew that their decision now would define the company for years to come. What are our legal obligations here? He asked Diana. We have grounds for immediate termination based on violation of our non-discrimination policies. The union will fight it, but we have a strong case. And if we don't fire her? Marcus Williams was an investigative journalist who had worked at a major newspaper for 12 years. He had covered corruption, corporate scandals, and civil rights issues. When the story about the billionaire on the plane first broke, Marcus knew there was more to uncover. He started making calls. He had sources at several airlines from previous stories. Someone would know something. Someone always did. 3 days after the airline completed its internal investigation, Marcus received an encrypted email. The sender's identity was hidden. The message was brief. Thought you should see this. Attached was a PDF file. It was marked confidential internal use only. Marcus opened it and started reading. His eyes grew wider with each page. It was the complete internal investigation report. Every interview transcript, every piece of evidence, every conclusion. And it was explosive. Marcus spent 6 hours verifying the document's authenticity. He called his sources. He checked details against public information. Everything matched up. This was real, he called his editor. I have the airline's internal investigation report. You need to see this. Within an hour, the newspaper's legal team had reviewed it. They confirmed it was safe to publish. Marcus wrote his article, and the newspaper's website posted it at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. The headline read, Leaked report reveals flight attendant lied about confrontation with black billionaire. The article included key excerpts from the investigation. It quoted Jennifer's recorded statement where she said the billionaire didn't look like he belonged in first class. It included Rachel's testimony about Jennifer's comments before even speaking to him. It featured the communications recordings that proved Jennifer had lied about feeling threatened. Marcus wrote, According to the airline's own investigation, there is overwhelming evidence that Jennifer engaged in racial profiling. Multiple crew members contradict her claims. Audio recordings show she made statements about the passenger's appearance before any interaction occurred.
Every witness states the passenger remained calm and polite throughout the encounter. The story exploded instantly.
News outlets around the world picked it up. Television morning shows led with it. Radio hosts discussed it. Social media was flooded with reactions. The airline's stock dropped another 4% before the market even opened. Richard Chen's phone started ringing at 6:15 a.m. It was the chairman of the board. Richard, have you seen the news? I'm reading it now. How did this leak happen? We have a major security breach. I don't know, but we need to respond immediately. I'm calling an emergency meeting. By 7 a.m., the executive team was assembled in the conference room. Everyone looked exhausted and stressed. Forget the press conference we planned for today, Richard said. That's too slow. We need to release a statement within the hour. The public relations team drafted a statement. Richard reviewed it and made changes. At 8 a.m., the airline posted to all their social media accounts and sent a press release to major news outlets. We have completed our internal investigation into the incident aboard Flight 447. The findings are clear. Our flight attendant violated company policies on non-discrimination. Her actions do not reflect our values as a company. Effective immediately, Jennifer has been terminated from employment. We sincerely apologize to our customer for this unacceptable treatment. We are implementing additional training and policy changes to ensure this never happens again. The response was immediate but complex. Many people praised the airline for taking action. Others criticized them for only doing so after the report was leaked. Some questioned why it took so long. Many wondered if they would have fired Jennifer at all if the report hadn't gone public. Jennifer woke up to find her termination letter had been sent to her email at 7:30 a.m. She hadn't received a phone call. No one had told her in person. She learned she was fired from the news. She called Tom immediately. They fired me. I just saw it on television. I'm seeing it now, Tom said. His voice was grim. The report leaked. Everything is out there, Jennifer. What report? The internal investigation. Someone gave it to the media. And honestly, Jennifer, it doesn't look good. What do you mean? They have recordings of you saying he didn't look like he belonged in first class. They have statements from other crew members. The evidence is pretty clear that you profiled him. Jennifer felt like the world was spinning. But I didn't. I was doing my job. Jennifer, I've read the report. The union will still support you, but this is going to be very difficult to fight. Across the country, the billionaire was in his office when his lawyer called. Have you seen the news? What news? The airline's investigation report leaked. It completely backs up your version of events. Jennifer has been fired. He pulled up the article on his computer and read through it. There it was in black and white. Proof that he had done nothing wrong. Proof that Jennifer had lied. Validation after days of doubt and stress, but he didn't feel the satisfaction he thought he would. Instead, he felt tired. This whole situation was exhausting. His lawyer continued, "This strengthens our position significantly. I think we should file a lawsuit. With this evidence, we have a very strong case." "Let me think about it," he said. Meanwhile, public opinion shifted dramatically. The people who had defended Jennifer started deleting their posts. The hashtag #IStandWithJennifer disappeared. Conservative commentators who had called her a victim went silent. New hashtags emerged. Justice served and truth wins trended. People who had supported the billionaire all along felt vindicated. Civil rights activists used the leaked report as evidence of how discrimination works in corporate America. Ashley, the influencer who had recorded the original video, posted an update. "The truth is finally out. I've been saying from the beginning that I recorded exactly what happened. Now everyone can see that Jennifer lied. She profiled that man based on his race, then lied about it to cover herself. I hope this serves as a lesson that racism is real and that holding people accountable matters." The airline began an internal investigation into who leaked the report. They interviewed everyone who had access to it. They checked computer logs and email records. But the leaker had been careful. They never found out who did it. Some people in the company were glad it leaked. They felt the airline was moving too slowly. They wanted justice to happen faster. The leak forced the company's hand and probably saved them from even more damage. Jennifer's life continued to fall apart. With the leaked report proving she had lied, the few supporters she had left abandoned her. Her social media accounts, which she had already made private, were flooded with even more hate messages. Her union held an emergency meeting to discuss her case. Tom argued that they should continue to support her. Even if she made mistakes, she has rights as a worker. The company violated procedure by firing her without proper notice. But other union members disagreed. "She makes all of us look bad," one said. "If we defend her, we're defending racism. I don't want to do that." After a heated debate, the union voted to provide only minimal support. They would help with the procedural aspects of her termination, but would not publicly defend her actions. Jennifer felt completely alone. Her husband was supportive, but even he was struggling. His co-workers at his own job were giving him strange looks. Their children were being bullied so severely that they had to switch schools. She sat in her living room reading the leaked report. Seeing her own words quoted back to her was devastating. "He doesn't look like he belongs in first class." Had she really said that? She tried to remember. Maybe she had, but she hadn't meant it in a racist way. Had she? The more she read, the worse it got. Statement after statement from other crew members contradicting her story. Audio recordings proving she had lied about feeling threatened. Timeline analysis showing there was never any legitimate reason to question the passenger. For the first time, Jennifer truly confronted what she had done. Not the version she had told herself. Not the story she had shared on television. But the actual truth. She had seen a black man in first class and assumed he didn't belong there. She had harassed him based on that assumption. When called out, she had lied and claimed he was aggressive. She had used her position of power to make his life difficult for no reason other than the color of his skin. She started crying. Deep, painful sobs. She was a racist. She had never thought of herself that way. She had all the right opinions. She voted the right way. She had black friends, or at least she thought she did. But none of that mattered. Her actions had been racist, and now her life was destroyed because of it. Her husband found her on the couch, still crying. "Maybe we should move," he suggested. "Start over somewhere else." "It won't matter," Jennifer said. "This will follow me everywhere. My name is permanently attached to this. If anyone Googles me, this is what they'll find. Forever." Meanwhile, the leaked report had sparked a broader conversation. Other airlines announced they were reviewing their own anti-discrimination policies. Flight attendant training programs were being updated to include more comprehensive bias training. Civil rights organizations held press conferences praising the leaked report as evidence that internal investigations could work when done properly. They called for more transparency in corporate investigations of discrimination. But they also pointed out a troubling reality. "This man is a billionaire," one activist said. "He had resources and a platform. The video went viral because of who he is. But what about all the regular people who experience discrimination and don't have millions of followers or legal teams? How many Jennifers are out there still working, still discriminating because their victims don't have the power to fight back?" The billionaire thought about this a lot. He was lucky in a way. His wealth and status had given him a platform. But he knew that countless black people experience similar treatment every day without any recourse or justice. That's when he decided what he needed to do next. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about using this moment to create real change. The billionaire stood in front of his bathroom mirror adjusting his tie. Today was the press conference. He had spent the last 3 days preparing with his lawyer and public relations team. They had written talking points and practiced responses to potential questions. But he had also written something himself. Something personal. Something that came from his heart rather than from strategy. His assistant knocked on the hotel room door. "The car is ready. We should leave now to arrive on time." The press conference was being held at a hotel in Manhattan. Major news outlets had sent reporters. Cameras were set up in rows. The room was packed with journalists, activists, and curious observers. He walked to the podium. Camera flashes lit up the room. He took a deep breath and began to speak. "Thank you all for being here. 3 weeks ago, I boarded a flight from New York to Los Angeles. I was traveling for business, something I do several times a month. I expected a routine flight. Instead, I experienced something that no person should ever have to experience." He paused and looked around the room. Every eye was on him. "I was racially profiled by a flight attendant who decided, based on the color of my skin, that I didn't belong in first class. I was questioned repeatedly about my boarding pass. I was treated with suspicion and hostility, and when other passengers spoke up to defend me, I was falsely accused of being aggressive." His voice remained calm and measured, but there was emotion behind his words. "The airline has released their investigation report. That report confirms what I already knew. I did nothing wrong. Jennifer, the flight attendant, engaged in racial profiling. She lied about my behavior to justify her actions." He gripped the sides of the podium. "But this isn't just about me. I'm fortunate. I have resources. I have a platform. I have lawyers. My story went viral because of who I am and what I've accomplished. But I want you to think about all the people who experience this same discrimination every single day, without any recourse. The single mother who gets questioned at the gate. The college student who gets extra screening. The businessman who gets passed over for service. These things happen constantly, and most of the time nobody films it. Nobody cares, and nothing changes." The room was completely silent, so I'm announcing today that I will be filing a lawsuit against the airline. Not because I need the money, but because we need systemic change. The settlement terms I'm demanding include mandatory anti-bias training for all employees, the creation of an independent oversight committee for discrimination complaints, and the implementation of clear consequences for employees who engage in racial profiling. Reporters started taking notes rapidly. Furthermore, I'm establishing a foundation with an initial funding of $10 million. This foundation will provide legal assistance to people who experience discrimination while traveling, but don't have the resources to fight back. It will also fund research and advocacy for policy changes in the airline industry. He pulled out the paper he had written himself. "I want to speak directly to people of color who are watching this. I see you. I know what you go through. I know the exhaustion of having to prove yourself constantly. I know the anger of being treated like a criminal for existing in spaces that are supposedly open to everyone. I know the pain of being stereotyped and judged before you even open your mouth." His voice cracked slightly with emotion. "You are not crazy. You are not too sensitive. What you experience is real, and it's not acceptable. We deserve to move through the world with dignity. We deserve to be treated as individuals, not as stereotypes. We deserve justice." The room erupted in applause. Some reporters were wiping their eyes. Civil rights leaders in the audience stood up. He took questions for 30 minutes. Reporters asked about the lawsuit, the foundation, and his personal feelings about the incident. He answered each question thoughtfully and directly. One reporter asked, "Do you think Jennifer should ever be able to work as a flight attendant again?" He paused before answering. "That's not for me to decide. What I hope is that she takes this opportunity to truly examine her own biases and prejudices. We all have them. The question is whether we're willing to acknowledge them and do the work to change. I hope she does that work. I hope she becomes someone who fights against racism instead of perpetuating it." Another reporter asked, "Are you angry?" "Yes," he said honestly. "I'm angry that this happened. I'm angry that it keeps happening. I'm angry that my children will probably experience similar things as they grow up. But I'm channeling that anger into action. That's the only way forward." The press conference ended, and the billionaire's words were broadcast around the world. His speech was shared millions of times on social media. People praised his grace and his commitment to creating change. The airline responded within hours. Their new statement was much more comprehensive than previous ones. "We acknowledge that we failed our customer. We take full responsibility for the discrimination he experienced. We accept the lawsuit and are prepared to work with him and his legal team to implement meaningful changes. We are committed to becoming a leader in anti-discrimination practices in our industry." Richard Chen, the CEO, also gave a personal statement. "As a person of color myself, this incident hits close to home. I've experienced discrimination in my own life. I should have acted faster and more decisively. We will do better." The airline announced immediate policy changes. They created a hotline for reporting discrimination. They hired diversity consultants to review all their training programs. They established quarterly audits of customer complaints to identify patterns of bias. Other airlines took notice. Within days, several major carriers announced similar initiatives. The industry was being forced to confront its problems with discrimination. Jennifer watched the press conference from her living room. Hearing the billionaire speak about the pain of discrimination, she felt a new wave of shame. She had caused that pain. She had been the villain in this story. She thought about his comment that he hoped she would do the work to examine her biases. Maybe she should. Maybe there was a path forward that involved real change and accountability. She called a therapist who specialized in racial bias and prejudice. "I need help," she told them. "I need to understand why I did what I did, and I need to become a better person." It was the first step, but it was something. Meanwhile, the lawsuit moved forward. The billionaire's legal team filed comprehensive documents detailing the discrimination and its impact. They demanded $7 million in damages, but more importantly, they demanded the systemic changes he had outlined. The airline's lawyers reviewed the case. They knew they couldn't win. The evidence was overwhelming. "We should settle," they advised Richard. Negotiations began. The billionaire's team was firm on the policy changes. They wanted everything in writing. They wanted accountability measures. They wanted transparency. After 2 weeks of talks, they reached an agreement. The airline would pay $8 million. $6 million would go to the Foundation for Discrimination Victims. $2 million would go to the billionaire personally, which he announced he would donate to civil rights organizations. More importantly, the airline agreed to every policy change demanded. Mandatory quarterly anti-bias training, independent oversight committee with power to investigate complaints, clear disciplinary procedures for employees who discriminate, public reporting of discrimination complaints and resolutions. The settlement was announced at another press conference. This time, Richard Chen stood beside the billionaire. "This is the beginning of a partnership," Richard said. "We failed, but we're committed to doing better. These policy changes will make our airline safer and more welcoming for all passengers." The billionaire added, "This is what accountability looks like. Mistakes were made, but the airline has taken responsibility and committed to real change. I hope this serves as a model for other companies." Civil rights organizations praised the settlement. "This is a major victory," one leader said, "not just for one man, but for everyone who has experienced discrimination while traveling. These policy changes will protect countless people." But not everyone was satisfied. Some people felt the settlement was too lenient. Others thought Jennifer should have faced criminal charges. The debate continued online and in the media. Ashley, The influencer who started it all with her video posted one final update about the situation. I recorded that video because I knew what I was seeing was wrong. I'm glad it led to real change. But let's remember that this shouldn't have been necessary. People shouldn't need to record discrimination for it to be taken seriously. We need to believe victims when they speak up, even without viral videos. In the weeks following the settlement, stories started emerging from other passengers. People who had experienced similar discrimination shared their experiences. Some dated back years. The foundation the billionaire created was flooded with requests for help. His team hired lawyers and investigators to handle the cases. They helped a teacher who had been kicked off a flight for speaking Spanish. They assisted a Muslim woman who had been subjected to extra screening because of her hijab. They supported a disabled man who had been denied proper accommodations. Each case received individual attention. Some were settled quietly. Others became public battles. But in every case, the foundation fought for justice and dignity. Congress took notice of the issue. A senator from California announced hearings on discrimination in the airline industry. She invited the billionaire to testify. He sat before the congressional committee and told his story again. But he also brought stories of the people his foundation was helping. He presented data on discrimination complaints across the industry. He proposed legislation to strengthen protections for passengers. Discrimination in travel is not just about hurt feelings, he testified. It's about access. It's about opportunity. When people are afraid to fly because they might be profiled or harassed, it limits their ability to work, to visit family, to live their lives. This is a civil rights issue, and it deserves the attention of Congress. The hearing was broadcast live. Millions of people watched. The testimony was powerful and moving. Several senators committed to introducing new legislation. The cultural impact of the incident continued to spread. Business schools added it as a case study. They taught students about the cost of discrimination, not just in moral terms, but in financial terms too. The airline had lost hundreds of millions in market value. Their reputation had been damaged. Other companies learned from their mistakes. Diversity training programs evolved. Instead of generic presentations, they started using real examples like this case. They asked employees to examine their own biases. They created scenarios and role-playing exercises to help people recognize when they were making assumptions based on race. The incident became a turning point in the conversation about racism in America. It wasn't just about overt hatred or violence. It was about everyday assumptions and biases. It was about how people in positions of power could cause harm without even realizing it. And slowly, things began to change. 6 months had passed since the incident on Flight 447. The world had changed in small but significant ways. The billionaire sat in his office looking at the progress reports from his foundation. They had helped 83 people fight discrimination cases. They had won 61 of them. The other cases were still ongoing. His assistant brought in the mail. Among the letters was one with shaky handwriting. He opened it and began to read. "Dear sir, my name is Maria. I am a grandmother from Texas. Last month I was flying to see my daughter who just had a baby. A flight attendant questioned whether I could afford my ticket because I don't speak English very well. Your foundation helped me file a complaint. The airline apologized and gave me a refund. But more than that, they treated me with respect. Thank you for fighting for people like me." He kept every letter like this in a special folder. They reminded him why this work mattered. The airline had transformed significantly. Every employee now went through 8 hours of anti-bias training every quarter. The training wasn't just videos and presentations. It included interactive scenarios, discussions about real incidents, and honest conversations about race and prejudice. Richard Chen had hired Dr. Patricia Williams, a renowned expert on discrimination, to oversee the changes. She was tough but fair. She didn't accept excuses or half measures. "Change is hard," she told the airline staff during a training session. "You will make mistakes. But the question is whether you're willing to learn and do better. That's what we're asking of you." The Independent Oversight Committee was now fully operational. It consisted of 5 members, including a civil rights lawyer, a former airline executive, a professor of sociology, and 2 regular citizens. They reviewed every discrimination complaint that came in. In the first 6 months, they received 47 complaints. They investigated each one thoroughly. 12 employees were disciplined for discriminatory behavior. 3 were fired. The rest received additional training and monitoring. The committee published quarterly reports that were available to the public. They showed the types of complaints, how they were handled, and what changes resulted. It was unprecedented transparency for the airline industry. Other airlines started copying these practices. Some did it because they wanted to be better. Others did it because their customers demanded it. Either way, the industry was changing. Flight attendant training programs across the country were revised. They now included extensive sections on recognizing and confronting bias. New flight attendants learned Jennifer's story as a cautionary tale about how assumptions and prejudice could destroy careers and harm innocent people. Michael, the flight attendant who had testified against Jennifer, became an instructor in the new training program. He spoke honestly about his own experiences with bias and how he had learned to recognize it in himself and others. "I worked with Jennifer for 5 years," he told new trainees. "I never thought of her as a racist person. But her actions that day were racist." That's the thing about bias. Good people can do bad things when they don't examine their assumptions. Our job is to serve all passengers with respect, not just the ones who look like us or who we think belong in certain seats. The foundation continued to grow. The billionaire had added another $20 million of his own money. Corporate sponsors contributed too. They had opened regional offices to handle cases across the country. They didn't just handle airline discrimination. The foundation expanded to help with discrimination in hotels, restaurants, and other travel-related industries. They were becoming a powerful force for change. One of their most significant cases involved a hotel chain that had been systematically charging black customers higher rates than white customers. The foundation's lawyers uncovered the practice through data analysis. The lawsuit resulted in a $50 million settlement and major policy changes across the entire chain. Ashley, the influencer who had recorded the original video, continued to use her platform for social justice issues. She had gained 3 million more followers since the incident. Brands wanted to work with her. Book publishers wanted her story. But she stayed focused on what mattered. She continued to record and share instances of injustice she witnessed. She used her voice to amplify the voices of people who didn't have platforms. She had become an important activist in her own right. "I just did what anyone should do," she said in an interview. "I saw something wrong and I recorded it." But the real heroes are the people who face discrimination every day and keep fighting for justice. Jennifer's life had taken a very different path. After months of therapy, she had come to terms with what she had done. Her therapist helped her understand how her unconscious biases had shaped her actions. It was painful work, but necessary. She wrote a letter to the billionaire. She didn't expect him to forgive her. She didn't even know if he would read it, but she needed to say it. "I am deeply sorry for what I did to you. I've spent months examining my own prejudices and biases. I understand now how my actions were rooted in racism. Even though I didn't see it at the time, I caused you pain and humiliation. I abused my position of power. There is no excuse for what I did. I am working every day to become a better person. I know I can never undo the harm I caused, but I hope that by being honest about my mistakes, I can help others avoid making the same ones." The billionaire did read the letter. He didn't respond, but he kept it. He believed in redemption and second chances. He hoped Jennifer was genuine in her efforts to change. Jennifer had found a job working at a warehouse. It was humbling after 15 years as a flight attendant, but she needed the work. Her family needed the income, and in some ways the anonymity was a relief. Her coworkers didn't know who she was. To them, she was just Jennifer, a middle-aged woman working in shipping and receiving. She kept her head down and did her work. She was polite to everyone, especially to the black and brown coworkers. She listened to their stories and experiences. She learned. She attended a support group for people trying to overcome their own racism and prejudice. It was mostly white people who had said or done racist things and were trying to do better. The meetings were held in a church basement. They sat in a circle and shared their experiences. "My name is Jennifer," she said at her first meeting. "I racially profiled someone and destroyed my career and my reputation. I'm here because I need to change." The group welcomed her. They didn't judge her. They understood because they were all on similar journeys. One evening, Jennifer was approached by a documentary filmmaker who was making a film about racism and redemption. "Would you be willing to tell your story on camera?" the filmmaker asked. Jennifer thought about it for a long time. Part of her wanted to hide forever, but another part of her thought that maybe, just maybe, she could help others learn from her mistakes. She agreed. The documentary was released 8 months after the incident. It included her interview, the billionaire's perspective, and analysis from experts on bias and discrimination. Jennifer was nervous about how people would react. The response was mixed. Some people praised her for taking accountability. Others said she was trying to profit from her racism. Many simply didn't care what she had to say. But there were also people who reached out to say her story had helped them. Teachers used clips from the documentary in their classrooms. Human resources departments showed it during training. It became another tool in the ongoing fight against discrimination. The billionaire continued his advocacy work. He testified before Congress multiple times. He worked with legislators to draft new laws protecting passengers from discrimination. He partnered with other civil rights organizations to expand the reach of his foundation. He also made sure to take care of himself. The incident had taken an emotional toll. He went to therapy to process the trauma. He spent more time with his family. He remembered that he was more than just this one incident. His children asked him questions about what had happened. He answered honestly but age-appropriately. Sometimes people treat others badly because of how they look, he explained to his 8-year-old son. But we don't let that stop us from being who we are, and we work to make things better for everyone. A year after the incident, the airline invited him to speak at their annual employee meeting. It was a bold move. Some people thought it was tone-deaf. Others saw it as an important gesture of accountability. He accepted the invitation. He stood before thousands of airline employees and told his story again. But this time he also acknowledged the progress they had made. Change is possible, he said. This company failed me, but they took responsibility and they did the work to do better. That's all we can ask. None of us are perfect. We all have biases, but the question is what we do about them. The employees gave him a standing ovation. Many were crying. They understood the weight of what he was saying. The incident became a case study not just in business schools, but in psychology programs, sociology classes, and training seminars around the world. It was taught as an example of how everyday racism works, how social media can drive accountability, and how systemic change can happen when people demand it. Universities invited the billionaire to speak. He accepted some invitations and declined others. He was careful not to let his entire identity become defined by this one incident. He was still a businessman, a father, a philanthropist, and a person with a full life. But he also recognized that this platform gave him an opportunity to make real change. So he used it wisely. The foundation continued to grow and evolve. They launched a scholarship program for students studying civil rights law. They funded research on bias in artificial intelligence and automated systems. They worked with tech companies to develop better tools for identifying and preventing discrimination. 5 years after the incident, the billionaire sat down for a major interview with a news magazine. The journalist asked him what he had learned from the experience. "I learned that change is slow but possible," he said. "I learned that one person's courage to record something can spark a movement. I learned that accountability matters. And I learned that we can't give up, even when the fight seems endless." "Do you think racism in travel has gotten better?" the journalist asked. "Yes and no," he said honestly. "The policies are better. The training is better. Companies are more aware. But racism doesn't disappear just because we have better policies. It's deeply rooted in our society. We have to keep working at it every single day." What would you say to someone who experiences discrimination while traveling? Document it if you can. Report it, don't let it slide. But also take care of yourself. These experiences are traumatic. You don't have to be the hero. You don't have to fight every battle. But know that there are resources and people who will support you. You're not alone. The interview ended with the journalist asking about his hopes for the future. "I hope for a world where a black man can sit in first class without being questioned, where a woman in a hijab can fly without extra screening, where a person speaking Spanish isn't seen as suspicious, where we judge people as individuals, not stereotypes. That's the world I'm working toward. That's the world my foundation exists to create." The magazine article was widely read and shared. It reminded people of how far they had come and how far they still had to go. Jennifer read the article in the break room at the warehouse. She felt that familiar pang of shame and regret. But she also felt something else. Gratitude that the billionaire had turned his pain into purpose. Hope that she too could contribute to positive change even in small ways. She volunteered at a community center teaching English to immigrants. She participated in her company's diversity committee. She spoke up when she heard coworkers make prejudiced comments. She was genuinely trying to be better. The world moved on as it always does. News stories dominated the headlines. New scandals emerged. But the changes that resulted from that day on Flight 447 remained. The policies stayed in place. The foundation kept working. The conversation about discrimination continued. And sometimes, late at night, the billionaire thought about that morning when he boarded a plane expecting a routine flight. He thought about how one person's prejudice had changed his life. But he also thought about how his response had changed the world, even if just a little bit. That was enough. That had to be enough. Because the fight for justice and dignity wasn't about one big victory. It was about countless small changes that added up over time. It was about refusing to accept discrimination as normal. It was about standing up, speaking out, and never giving up. The incident on Flight 447 became a symbol. A reminder that racism was still alive and well in America, but also a reminder that accountability was possible, that change could happen, and that ordinary people could become part of something extraordinary. The story didn't have a perfect ending because real life doesn't work that way. But it had a meaningful ending. Progress had been made. Lives had been changed. And the work continued. One day at a time, one person at a time, one moment of courage at a time.